Well, howdy there. Welcome to my campfire. I'm good to see you, and thanks for joining. Yeah, what is this waterway? We're out by the L-28. You know, we're high and dry, don't worry, you know. This might be the highest spot in the Everglades, and I thought, the L-28, it's a tall canal. I'm guessing it's about 15 feet tall, you know. We're way above the water, and I just thought it would be a good spot for a campfire, you know. Sing some songs, talk about some of the issues, and that's really what the campfire is all about. And, you know, how rude of me not to introduce myself. My name's Bobby Angel, and I'm a little bit of a singer-songwriter. You know, I got a reputation for singing songs, guilty as charged, and I guess my brand of singing, I think it does best around a campfire. You know, just a guitar and a campfire, the crackle, something about that light that it kicks off, and the aroma. Just something special about that. So, you know, this evening, you know, the sun went down. That's why it's dark. And when it gets dark, that's why we make the campfire. You know, we want to kick off some light and gather around it. Let the relaxation reflex kick in. So today I wanted to talk, tonight. My goodness, I get used to saying that. You know, we get used to talking so much during the day that sometimes when the night comes along, you know, you just kind of say, they say there's 24 hours in the day, but a good portion of that, especially during the winter season, 16 hours is night. So we don't say there's 24 hours in the night. You ever notice that? Anyhow, that's the type of thing you think about it around the campfire. So I just wanted to talk about the L-28. There's just some interesting things to talk about the L-28, but why don't we get right down to a song? Because I think we'll get to the song. I have a song I wanted to sing. Because I feel like, you know, the L-28, it's kind of in a larval state. It was built back in the 60s, and here we are 50 years later, 60 years later, and it's still kind of serving the same God. And we kind of shifted that. It was going to serve the God of development, and it was going to shunt all the water from the Big Cypress into the Everglades, and then everything on the left-hand side was going to be developed. But a couple years after it got built, all the land on the left-hand side, the west side, that they were going to drain got all conserved. But, you know, nobody thought, hey, why don't we go in and change around this canal to better serve those values in that area? So this song, Midstream, I feel like we're maybe in midstream on this, and maybe we have to cross over to the other bank. So without further ado, here's the song. Midstream, midstream, it's where I long to be. Midstream, midstream, it's where I long to be. Don't want to go to the other bank. I've been there before, so no thanks. And I don't want to return to the other shore. There ain't nothing for me there anymore. Midstream, midstream, it's where I want to be. Midstream, midstream, it's where I want to be. Midstream, 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 midstream. Who cares if I get swept away? Sounds better than having to stay. Or maybe it's not too late to turn back the clock and reclaim my fate. Midstream, 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 it's where I wanna be. Midstream, midstream, it's where I wanna be. Getting there, it isn't what counts. It's never the end when the ship goes down. Or maybe it is, you never know. It's called learning to go with the flow. Midstream, 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 midstream. midstream, 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 midstream. Midstream, midstream, it's where I wanna be. Midstream, midstream, it's where I go. It's where I go to dream. Yeah, so about the L-28, let's talk about that more. You know, I think you can read about it until the cows come home, the L-28. Actually, you're not going to find much literature. You're going to go on the internet, and that isn't going to be very good unless you find this Campfire, which we are filmed with some high production quality. So let's talk about the L-28. The L-28 is a levee, and it's, to the unacquainted, if you were just to walk up to it, it would be the most unusual levee, because usually a levee is, oh, you're in town, there's that little hill, you climb up to the top of it, and oh, I see why there's a levee here, there's a river on the other side, or there's the Everglades, or, you know, or you walk up the levee in the lake. Oh, the levee surrounds the lake, and that makes perfect sense. And so usually a levee separates a developed area on one side and undeveloped on the other. Not the L-28. You go along the L-28 pretty much the whole way, and on either side it's just swamp and Everglades as far as you can see. And it wasn't supposed to be that way. When they built it starting in the 50s, but the L-28 got built in the 60s, it was supposed to be on the left-hand side, all developed. All the land, it was swamp, but it was all subdivided. It was to all be developed. And then on the right-hand side, that was to be the Everglades. So that scenario would have occurred. It would have been people living in the Big Cypress side, and the jetport was going to really hug up against the levee, this huge airport with 8 runways and comprising 39 square miles. You'd walk up and on the levee and you'd say, oh, there's the Everglades, and you look back the other way and say, just a bunch of houses. Well, that never happened. The jetport was such a large kind of development proposal. It was pre-NEPA. In fact, it was the first NEPA. It inspired the first NEPA report, even though NEPA was passed following the initial report. That was kind of the maiden attempt to do an environmental impact statement. And it wasn't even the jetport that triggered the alarm bells about the jetport. It was the water management, the Everglades Drainage District director. His last name is Patrick. He was very concerned that the jetport, Miami-Dade, had negotiated with FDOT to extend the southern route, the southernmost extension of I-75, to along Route 84, Alligator Alley. And he was concerned that that road was going to severely disrupt water flows in the Everglades. Well, he wrote to some 100 organizations expressing his concern, and that's how Joe Browder and others got involved. But Joe Browder was really at the forefront of it at the local scene. He was a journalist, and he got Marjorie Stoneham Douglas involved, and he worked with Nat Reed and others. And before we knew it, we that levee that was supposed to be really the eastern edge of Naples, if you can think about it that way, it all got conserved. But the L-28 just stayed there. You know, nothing really ever changed with the L-28. They poked a couple holes in the tieback, and they put a gate or two on there, but it was all to relieve the high water flows from 3A. Right now, there's a king-size sheet of water all kind of stuffed up on this twin-side bed of 3A. So at various points, In 1983, there was a huge El Nino winter rainfall, and that just flooded water everywhere that in overdrained areas that a deer herd had moved into, and so it flooded out the deer. The deer shouldn't have been there, but the area had been overdrained in that huge storm event. We've had something similar happen recently with Eta. It just filled the Everglades with water, and a lot of that spilled into the Big Cypress. They put emergency pumps to pump it across, and there's a new project in town. It's called the Western Everglades Restoration Project, and it's a bunch of stakeholders coming together and thinking, hey, we built this L-28, this very odd levee, and it's a discontinuous levee. It was such a the water was going all sorts of different directions there. They had to angle the levee at one point and then make it discontinuous, and then a headwater arm reaches into the Seminole reservation. So it's an odd levee in many ways, but it's become part of the water infrastructure, and now there's an effort underway to, hey, let's change it. Let's reconfigure it so it can do a better job of spreading the water out and correct some water quality problems, and just give it a modern day fix. And that's great. And we're moving forward on that project, and it's got a lot of stakeholder involvement. One of the issues is, though, the L-28 was never finished. It's one of these orphaned levees of the CNSF project that was supposed to be part of a more expansive development scheme. Like I mentioned, everything on the left-hand side, the west side of the L-28, was pretty much slated for development. That never happened. And there was a southern extension of the L-28 that ran another 20 miles to the south. That was never built. There was another northern extension that I think ran another 5 miles. And then a midsection where the tieback. So my point is, it never got finished. It's this orphaned levee, and it's kind of in the wrong spot. I mean, today we think about, the levee is right at that exact physiographic boundary between the Everglades and the Big Cypress. No, not at all. It's kind of straddles the two, and there was never an exact physiographic boundary. It was a transition. If anything, they pushed the levee too far into the Everglades. So there's low-lying swamp and Everglades on the left-hand side of the levee, which they were going to, take care of by really draining that whole area, but that never happened. So that's an area where water accumulates today. So what's my point on all this? The L-28 is, we talk about the Everglades, we talk about the Big Cypress. I like talking about the L-28. It's a fascinating history behind it, and there's efforts underway to reconfigure it, and I think it deserves some attention, and it's getting that attention with the Western Everglades Restoration Plan. All that chitter chatter, and that's good chitter chatter. You notice that there's good chitter chatter around the campfire. I don't know why that is. Sometimes you have chitter chatter in other areas, and it's really not that interesting, or it's kind of a waste of time. But the campfire chitter chatter, it takes it to a whole different level, kind of flips it on its side, like it's chatter chittle instead of chitter chatter, if that makes sense. And I do think it makes sense. A lot of things make sense around the campfire, and then you kind of apply them more broadly. But what I'm thinking about, and a song is coming to mind, it's the pre-drainage Everglades. What was the pre-drainage Everglades like? And there's a fella, Hugh Willoughby. He not only went on a skiff from Lake Okeechobee, I think it was in the early 1900s. I think the date was before 1930. I don't know why 1913 is hopping in my. It was before I think it was 1903. He hopped in a skiff and he went clear down into the Everglades, through the Sawgrass Marsh, into the Ridge and Slough, and Well, you'll see in this song, I kind of steered him a little along. You know, I pretended I was in the skiff with him, and I steered him into the Big Cypress. And then it really gets interesting. And then Hugh kind of, came to life, and Hugh said to me, hey, let's go through the other parts of the Everglades in time and space, and this is going to be a song, an ode to the pre-drainage. So without further ado, let me just tune up a couple strings here. And thank you for, I have a little bit of a website, bobbyangel.org, and I'm taking donations, a little tip hat there I have, and I was able to get some new strings. And all those tips, they go to supporting the cause, the nature folk movement. And I encourage you to go to the website, naturefolk.net. That kind of talks about this ecosystem of websites that is trying to bring us back closer to nature. All those tech titans out there, they're all kind of eager for you to spend all your time on the phone. And I guess I'm not going to ever be able to compete with those tech titans, but I think we can carve out a spot on the phone where we kind of have a gateway for connecting to nature, maybe putting down our phone. That's a side topic. See what happens around the campfire. I'm trying to sing a song on the pre-drainage Everglades, and before you know it, I'm talking about other stuff. So let me tune up these strings here, and let's get down to it. Let's pretend it never happened. Let's pretend it never happened. Let's pretend it never happened. We'll go there in our dreams. The lake is bursting at its seams, going south in a skiff with you. Will it be through a wall of sawgrass, thick as can be, until at the edge we finally break free into a maze of braids and an ending sea? On my face the feel of a sunny breeze, and in the distance tiny islands of trees below, pumping up a subterranean freshet, teeming with fish, alligators, and flocks of egrets. And then we get swept west into the Big Cypress, towering trees all around, like looking up at a cliff. An ivory-billed woodpecker landing on a branch underneath the shaded grove with many orchids. And finally to the mangroves where saltwater I sniff, when around turns you to suddenly interrupt, to say nothing is real, it's time to wake up. Let's pretend it never happened. Let's pretend it never happened. Let's pretend it never happened. We'll go there in our dreams. A wanted poster on the wall, offering up a big reward, wanted dead or alive, the new outlaw, a scourge to paradise, its only flaw. And so began the hunt for W-A-T-E-R. Distant with his dredge, he blew up the falls and tore into a marsh with his iron claws, to drain it away at any cost, with no concern or care for what might be lost, or anything other than greed might be served, to turn the Garden of Eden into a trucking farm. Nature would succumb and soon enough learn, draining it so hard it all started to burn. The flames and the smoke filling the sky at every turn, until we came to a ghostly face filling the air. It was distant saying, welcome to my nightmare. Let's pretend it never happened. Let's pretend it never happened. Let's pretend it never happened. We'll go there in our dreams. First came the waves and then came the storm, awakening the lake and causing it to roar, sending its water over the levee in a big waterfall, flooding many people on the southern shore. A nation named as
settling the score by defeating the water and declaring war. And so they sent in the Army Corps to box it in. This time for sure, control the water with concrete doors, so that when it rains it no longer pours. Pave it over more and more until there's nothing left to do but stay indoors. Nature left hanging on life support as tourists click their drinks in big beach resorts. That's when I close my eyes and I hear a shout. It's Hugh on his skiff telling me it's time to go back out. Let's pretend it never happened. Let's pretend it never happened. Let's pretend it never happened. We'll go there in our dreams. First thing we did was rip out the gates and let the water flow back to its natural state. Slowly start filling back in the lake and overflowing back into the glades, forming new channels in the shape of a maze, with all the animals returning to give it praise after losing every battle. Turning a new page, welcoming in a new geologic age. The clouds forming up in the sky, sending new water from down up high. New springs forming down below, so many new places for the water to go. How did we even do it? We did not know, other than it was an incredible show. We sat and watched it, content as could be. Nature completely restored to a sanctuary. Once something startled me and I opened my eyes. A dim light in the distance, a new sunrise. Let's pretend it never happened. Let's pretend it never happened. Let's pretend it never happened, and we'll go there. Yeah, we'll go there. Yeah, we'll go there in our dreams.
So that song, what I like about it is the quest. Well, we've never seen the pre-drainage Everglades. You know, there's little snippets of it written here and there, but nobody's ever been there, or the people that have been there in oral traditions. And that would be the tribal nation that called the Everglades home before there were any European or United States settlement in the area. So you kind of have to infer what the pre-drainage was like. You go back to the old reports, the Buckingham Smith, where he described it really vividly. And of course he was describing it because he was saying there's a bounty of land here. If we could only drain it, then we could really, have some farms, productive agricultural lands, and, give everybody a little, how many acre farm? Anyhow, fast forward, 150 years, almost 175 years, and so nobody's ever saw the pre-drainage Everglades, and that's why the only way to see them really is to close your eyes and dream about it. I think you work on something long enough, you kind of get lost in this dream space where reality morphs with whatever it is when you dream. Is that reality? I'm not sure. It's some sort of reality, and that's a whole different topic. But I think it's important to dream and be creative and think about what was and what could be, and Hugh Willoughby, he left a legacy there that we can build on. He described something that otherwise we wouldn't have as good a handle on without his description. And there's a lot of other people out there, that did the same. And I encourage you to do the same. If we all go out and write some notes and our thoughts, they can factor in down the road, and then people gather around the campfire and are talking about what you wrote. And I'm thinking about some of the gibberish I sometimes write, and maybe I want to burn those words in the campfire. Maybe we'll do that too. So why don't we do one more song? I'm trying to think what's a good song, and why don't we do this? This will be a surprise song. I'll just go into it and we'll talk about it afterwards. I'm gonna have to tune this one string a little different for this song, and then we'll go into it. We'll talk about it afterwards. So here it goes. All right, this is called "Pulling Victory from the Jaws of the Glades" by Angel. She used to work in the Everglades and always knew how to play the game. Whenever they asked and wanted to know, she told them the Everglades, they were the only show. But then one time she finally got fed up when she scooped the water up in a paper cup to find it filled with all sorts of nasty stuff. That's when she ran off and escaped to the swamp, a place that has everything you could ever want. Forevermore and forever since, she's lived on the west side of a hill they call the L-28 fence. And now she feels free whenever a visitor has an inquiry. She says, "Oh man, it's so easy to see. It's just shadier and cooler underneath the trees. But if you like concrete and you like gates, then the Everglades, it's your place. Or a bureaucratic mind-numbing malaise again, I recommend the Everglades. Or pay $20 to try and see a shark. I point you in the direction of Everglades Park. Inside a dome, that's the place I call home. Water up to my knees and no entrance fees. Gators are grumbling, storm clouds are thundering, and mosquitoes are singing in my ears. I promise you there's really nothing to fear. The Everglades was just a phase. I really don't get the whole craze. I'd rather be lost in the Cypress maze, away from the East Coast smoky haze, to catch the twilight's last shadowy rays, and fall to my knees to give them praise, and then stare up into that pitch black night, just me and the twinkling pinpricks of light. It's where you end, not where you start, that floods the love into your heart. It's where you end and not where you start, which is why the Big Cypress will always beat in my heart. hindsight, looking back, I think that was an appropriate song to end with, because here we are on the L-28, and we're kind of at the boundary between the Big Cypress and the Everglades. And that song was an homage to Lori Humphrey. She was a ranger who got her start in the Everglades, but then kind of, jumped the fence and went over to the Big Cypress National Preserve. So she kind of worked in both ecosystems, and she loved both ecosystems, but you know how it is with kind of rivalries. We always say, oh, Big Cypress is better than ever. And ever is kind of the acronym they use for Everglades. And that was kind of a friendly jousting with the Everglades. And, but a lot of people say that. They say the Big Cypress is their favorite part of the Everglades. I've heard it through so many people, some of your top Everglades restoration specialists, but then when it comes out to doling out the money and correcting the water on the Big Cypress side, their response is, well, oh, the Big Cypress, it's its own self-contained watershed. It doesn't need any help. It was conserved in the shape of a watershed, and well, that's the old way of thinking. That's the old way of thinking, and at the time, that's what they said. And they said that because they wanted to be able to sell the conservation of Big Cypress National Preserve back in 1974 and those other areas, and kind of say, hey, this isn't going to be a huge water fix like the Everglades. We're going to do conservation and hydrologic restoration in one fell swoop by, carving it out in the shape of the watershed. Well, here we are in the L-28. When they carved up the watershed, I'll have one of those dotted lines went right over our campfire here. So the people that did those studies, they carved out the watershed based on the canals and the levees they'd already dug. And they never really said, well, what if this canal and levee wasn't here? I mean, what if we had this campfire right down there in the water? Obviously, the campfire would be out because it would be flooded and it would be really soggy. And I would probably have to go through many match-it boxes to figure out that, wow, this soggy wood isn't going to light. But, if we could light it, then it would illuminate. Maybe get a lantern up on a tree, and that would illuminate the idea that, wow, the Big Cypress is actually connected with the Everglades. It's kind of the heart of the Everglades. It's the heart of where the Big Cypress connects to the Everglades, Big Cypress National Preserve, really, when you think about it. And it's not one watershed, it's many watersheds. So it's the Big Cypress paradox, I think, is what I'm saying. And it just coming to me here at this campfire is you can't have it both ways. You can't say the Big Cypress is my favorite part of the Everglades, but then when it comes to doling out the money and the love to get the water right in the Big Cypress, and you're not going to get the Everglades right if you don't get the Big Cypress right, then you can't have it. You can't have it both ways. You can't say you love it and it's your favorite part of the Everglades, but we're not going to dole out money to it or to design the big projects to get it right. So, this campfire, I didn't expect it to go in this direction, and that's the great thing about a campfire. You know how they say water has a mind of its own? I think a campfire has a mind of its own too. You can say it's going to go one way, and then it kind of starts drifting in all sorts of directions, and before you know it, you're wormholing down into the real topics that you need to get talking about. Well, there you have it. I think we had a good combination of songs and discussion, and I really appreciate, everybody being here. I'm just going to strum a little. Maybe some more ideas will pop up, but in the meanwhile, I'm just going to strum, and I just want to thank you for being at this campfire by the L-28. And let's do it again real soon.